Look at me. I am Ezio. La la la. I am from Italy. I'm from Venice. I am Italian, so I'm allowed to say this. What's good, everyone on YouTube? It's me again, back with another video. And today we're going to be doing something a little different. Something that I've never tried before. We're going to be soul swapping a shoe. And the shoe we'll be soul swapping today is actually something I've never shown on the channel, so consider this a very quick review as well of the shoe. It's actually a shoe from 2008, and if it's to be believed, I believe these were a Japan exclusive. But nevertheless, once you see what the shoe looks like, you can sort of understand exactly why I need a soul swap it at this point. 2008 was not that long ago. It's like, what, 17 years at this point? So getting straight into it, this is the pair we'll be soul swapping today. A pair of 2008 Air Stabs. Cookie crumbs included, because we are already dropping flakes everywhere. Actually, this left shoe is a lot more crumbly. I think I'll pull out the right shoe. So to touch on the background of this shoe, this was part of a 2-shoe pack. There was an Air Force One and this Air Stab, and it was part of the Taipan pack. So all over the upper, you got this like fake snake skin on it. Now, I haven't had these since 2008. I bought these around 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, and wore them a few times, and they were quite wearable back then. Though I decided to wear them within the last week over the weekend, and we suddenly had a catastrophic failure. And already a year ago, I was expecting to soul swap this shoe, so I started researching something that might actually be a good fit. And I ended up landing on a pretty interesting shoe that was pretty cheap, because soul swapping, you kind of need some cheap donors. And that shoe is the Nike Air Max SC, which has a completely unstable Air Max unit, unlike the Air Stabilities with its little teeth poking through the Air unit. So while the Air unit is the complete antithesis of what the Stab was supposed to be, there are a couple of details, especially the lines molded in the midsole, as well as some of the molding at the front, that I find quite similar to the Air Stab. And at least just eyeballing it, the midsole shapes seem to be pretty close. So hopefully this goes well. And really at this point, this will be a learning journey for both you and I. I will be pretty much voiceovering any of the B-roll that I end up shooting. And I think for the first part, at least the left shoe has crumbled quite a bit. We're gonna have a little fun with that.
And this is voiceover me in November, which is quite a long time since the recording of most of this footage. But right now, the left shoe was in a lot worse condition than the right shoe. It was pretty much falling apart at this point, hence the stomping. So with this left shoe, I ended up actually extracting the air units and the outsole unit and kept those as sort of mementos. And if you're wondering, yes, the Air Stab has a front air unit, so that's nice to know. Now with the right shoe, the condition of the foam was a lot better. It probably could have survived another year, but may as well just do the soul swap on both shoes. So to remove the midsole of this shoe, I used the boiling water method, which would help melt the glue and allow me to separate the upper from the midsole. And given that the glue is probably very old for a 2008 shoe, the separation was actually quite easy, and it only took 1 round of boiling water to get the upper separated. And since the condition of this midsole was much better, I basically kept this intact midsole as another keepsake, along with the air units that I had extracted from the left shoe. Now emboldened by how easy it was to remove the upper on the old shoe, I went ahead and began the boiling water method on my donor pair. And to say this was difficult would be an understatement. The glue on a new pair of shoes is a lot stronger than a vintage pair. And honestly, it took a lot of boiling water to get this done, and I ended up resorting to wearing a glove on one of my hands so I could actually pull at the upper while the boiling water was still at its hottest. I even resorted to using a knife to wedge in between the upper and the midsole to try and get the separation faster. And unfortunately, due to my impatience, I actually ended up ripping part of the midsole when removing the upper. Anyway, with that harsh lesson out of the way, it was time to clean up the midsoles as best as possible, and I used a combination of acetone to weaken the glue, sandpaper to try and get as much glue off as possible, and pliers for any stubborn pieces that wouldn't come off with the other two methods. During my sanding, I had a bit of a tip with the acetone which caused quite the mess on my table, but this isn't exactly the most professional setup in the first place, so no sleep lost on me. And as a last minute decision, I tried to salvage the pieces that I had accidentally ripped off the midsole by using my go-to shoe fix glue that I use for smaller jobs, and it ended up working out okay, and I managed to keep those small pieces on the midsole. As for the upper, while it was mostly clean after using the boiling water method, there was still some foam and old glue left, so I went ahead and used a Dremel to sandpaper away the last remaining bits. And now we reach the part that I'd been dreading this whole time, actually combining the two together. I had read online that contact cement was the commonly used method, and I made sure to get something that was weather resistant and dried flexible, unlike other glues such as super glue which would dry hard and crack. Using a simple painter's brush, I just went for it and applied a even looking coat onto the two surfaces, and once I had put them together, I inserted a wooden shoe tree to keep the shape and applied two bench clamps, one at the back and one at the front, to keep somewhat even pressure as I allowed these to cure for over 24 hours. And after all that hard work, did it pay off?
And we're finally back now with a different shirt, and let's just say the experiment kind of worked. And now I present to you the Nike Air Stab / Nike Air Max SC Hybrid in this brown colorway. And the experiment actually went a lot smoother than I thought it would. There are definitely a few pointers I would like to change if I were to ever do this again. But as the first time ever trying to sole swap a shoe, I actually think it looks pretty good and turned out pretty alright. Let's just talk on a few things I would like to recommend if you ever want to try and sole swap. Maybe a few things that I've learned along the way. The first thing I'd mention is you need a lot of patience. However much patience you think you need, double it. So where this came in consequence for me was in my sort of haste to try and rip off the upper from the midsole, I actually ended up tearing the midsole in two spots. So I've ended up having to like glue those pieces of foam back onto it. So it's not really noticeable on feet, but that is something to note. So just make sure if you're doing this, take your time with it. The second thing, and this is fully on me for not looking, if you're going to use a particular like contact cement, try to go for something that actually dries clear. So I just picked up like the smallest can that was available to me at my hardware store, and it turned out that it was a yellow colored glue. So pretty much every mistake I made on this shoe is clearly visible. So if you look along the edges where the midsole meets the upper, there's a lot of like yellow staining. So if you're going to do this, make sure to get, this seems kind of obvious, make sure to get some clear contact cement. The final mistake I made that I would recommend you guys don't make is if you're going to clamp the shoes together, make sure you use a clamp that has a wide surface area. So in the video you probably saw I used pretty regular sort of like bench clamps that have a pretty small like pinch point. And while it hasn't affected the upper much, it's actually caused this indentation on the foam around the toe. So now there's like this, it's almost like the Adidas tubular stuff where there's like a hollowed out piece from the midsole or the outsole. I'm hoping that will like dissipate over time, but that is something that I will admit as a mistake. So if you're going to clamp the shoes together, try to make sure you clamp with something with a wide surface area for much more even distribution of pressure. But overall, I'd say I'm really happy with how this turned out. The upper is just absolutely killer. So it was a shame that the midsole started crumbling. I really didn't want to just let go of such a fire upper. And all things considered, the SC midsole really does kind of resemble the Stab midsole. Obviously, minus the very iconic like stabbed air unit, this is a completely columnless air unit, which is basically the exact opposite of what the Stab was supposed to be. stability, air units, complete lack of stability. But enough rambling. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this particular Frankenstein. And if you're someone who's happened to soul swap a shoe before, if you have any sort of tips or recommended products or tools that you would use, feel free to leave in the comments down below. This has just been a fun little experiment for me and a interesting sort of dive into trying to revive a shoe that I really like. So just wanted to put it out there for you guys to see. So like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'll catch you guys in another video.